Welcome back to Vector Thrust, everybody. I'm your host, the Housecoat Gamer. Today we're taking a look at the most generic aircraft in history. Yeah, I'm just trying to find a... My god, it doesn't even have the standard slate coloring. Tiger meat will have to do. The F-16C. The only reason these aircraft don't use their official names is probably because licensing. The F-16, ooh, it's fit with the little lightning pod. Cute. The Fighting Falcon, and yes, that is the official designation. I don't care what everyone else has to say. That is the official designation of the aircraft. Fighting Falcon. Anyone who calls it Viper is wrong. Because that's not what the U.S. Air Force Procurement Office calls it. That is not the official name. It is the Fighting Falcon. The C model Block 30, I think. It's not the Block 60, it doesn't have the massive conformal fuel tanks. Otherwise known as the F-16F, EF, whatever. This thing was developed as a counter to the F-15. Well, counterbalance. The so-called fighter mafia of the 1960s-70s, led by Major, later General, Boyd, went, you know what, we need a cheap, small, single-seat fighter with a single engine that's cheap, available, and, well, needed. The F-15 was expensive as hell, and they could only produce so many of them. So there was a lightweight fighter competition. Despite what many people would have you think, this thing was meant to be cheap, armed only with maybe a few sidewinders, and just basically meant to be a point defense, lightweight dogfighting interceptor. It went up against the Northrop YF-17. You'll be seeing the later development of that later. The YF-17 lost, though that's obvious. And the F-16 went into production, and has been in production since the late 70s. Replacing pretty much everything prior in service, from the Century Series aircraft to even the F-4 in some ways. I'm not a fan of this thing because, well, it's a lightweight fighter. I prefer having a lot of ordnance. Kind of why I'm a fan of thrust vectoring equipped two-engine fighters, like the F-15 SMTD or the Raptor, which isn't in this game for some reason. Moving on. The Air Force decided, battlefields are changing, we're going to have to technologically upgrade this thing. So they gave it a better radar, better weapon systems, the capability to fire Sparrows and AMRAAMs. There's a reason I'm firing SPAMRAAMs. And basically made it a budget version of the F-15. Not as capable. Let's face it, it's not a bomber. It's barely a fighter bomber. But good enough. Now I realize I've probably insulted every F-16 fanboy out there, but let's be honest. If you had actually read the histories for this thing, especially coming from the 80s, you would realize, yes, this thing was meant to be cheap, numerous, and not exactly advanced. Fun fact, minus those AMRAAMs, this thing has the same turn rate, climb rate, and acceleration as a MiG-21, which only has, with only 2 air-to-air missiles. In a sense, you could call this thing the MiG-21's son. That said, the MiG-21 does have its flaws. With advancing technology, they decided to bulk up the spine. The MiG-21, well, the F-16, retains the bubble canopy, and is the second aircraft to actually have a bubble canopy. Frameless, discounting the large support frame in the back, for maximum visibility. And while it's more agile than every aircraft that's come before it in Project Wingman, it's only an interim aircraft, if you ask me. Worth using only until you get some of the higher level stuff. Housecoat Gaming, signing off.